what could be more Rhode Island than having a calamari tank? I love it. This is outstanding. We have 3 great startups who are here to pitch our judges, and you, our listeners, you get to vote. So let's just start with our judges. Allison Bologna, an award-winning journalist anchoring Providence NBC 10's News Sunrise. Allison was voted the top female reporter in the region for 2 years, and then followed that up every year afterward with being the best TV morning news anchor. If that was not enough, if that was not impressive enough, Allison also teaches yoga at her own studio, Shri Studio. She runs its nonprofit, Shri Service Corps, and she funds both with her own startup, Shri Bark, a nut-free snack line. So tons of impressive stuff there. Fantastic. Another judge, we have Ramil Patel. Ramil, I got the great chance of meeting Ramil, and you know when you first meet Ramil, it's one of those moments when you know that you're talking to someone much smarter than you within just a few seconds. He's highly impressive. He has held various strategy and operation roles at venture-backed startups, ranging from consumer goods to SaaS marketplace ventures. He has also co-invented a medical device that treats severe nosebleeds. He recently joined Tom Sperry from our venture capital roundtable at Rogue Venture Partners. And I know for a fact, Ramil is a native Rhode Islander. He, along with Annette and with Tom, I think he's part of that Jamestown mafia going on out there on Jamestown, right? And then Thor Johnson, I have known Thor personally, practically a neighbor of mine, great guy, an engineer by trade, and he's become a world-class marketer, and from that, just a world-class CEO, and actually, I understand also a fantastic baker of birthday cakes. He is the president of the Harvard Business School Association of Southern New England. He is a graduate of Brown University. He just returned from 2 years in Sweden, where he helped transform a product information management company, InRiver, into a SaaS leader in the category. He's held several very prominent roles prior to that, including being the chief marketing officer for Eloqua. So with that, this panel will be wrangled by our co-host, Annette. Annette, over to you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat, and thank you, judges, for being here. And look, this is going to be fun. So here's how this is going to work. Each of our presenting calamari tank companies will have 10 minutes to present. They can use PowerPoint. They don't have to use PowerPoint. They can show us whatever product they like to show us. And again, we have 3 of those. Each of them will have 10 minutes to present. After they present, each of them, when they present, there'll be 5 minutes. We're going to open it up to our judges to ask the tough questions. After we go through all 3 of those, actually, all of you out there in the audience, you'll get to judge. And at the end, it's kind of like America's Got Talent. The very last vote comes from the people. But our talented judges will be asking the pointed questions so that you can better understand whether or not this will be a winning company or not. So without further ado, let me actually stop. These are our companies, and I'm going to stop the share and call up to Pointz. Maggie Backenberg, are you here?
Yes, we're here. Could we also get sharing privileges for Trisha, who's the co-founder?
Yes, what is Trisha's last name so that our folks can do that?
Trisha Balaker.
Okay, so can we get those? I'm sure we can, Jenny. Jenny's doing it right now. She's right behind me. You see Jenny right there? Waving. She's in the Mass Challenge offices. All right. So are we ready to go, Jenny? She's got to look through a lot of people. Do you have slides to share?
Yep, we have slides to share. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
As soon as.
You want to go ahead and get that going, Maggie?
Yes, I'll share then, Trisha.
Okay.
Okay, we're seeing it now. We're seeing your web browser. Great. So this is Maggie Bachenberg from Pointz. And there's Trisha. Hey, Trisha.
Hey,
Thanks for joining.
having us.
All right, you guys are on. I'll be the timekeeper and I will keep it to 10 minutes, so go for it.
Okay. You take a deep breath, reveling in the crisp, clean air as you pedal along the road. Google Maps has just instructed you to turn right into a stream of cars and trucks zooming past you, spraying exhaust on your face. Your mind is engulfed in stress, and you can only think of one thing: don't fall off. My co-founder Maggie and I have talked to over 150 micromobility riders and have heard the same story again and again. Micromobility riders are riders who use lightweight, non-polluting vehicles, such as these featured here, such as bikes and scooters and other ones. Now, through these conversations, we've pinpointed the top 3 greatest fears that micromobility riders have. 1, being hit by cars and trucks. 2, falling off their vehicles. And 3, riding in lanes that are simply not protected, even if they're bike lanes, but they don't have barriers. The leading mapping agent, Google Maps, routes riders via the quickest routes. These routes, most of the time, are laden with these 3 issues. Now, many riders realize that if they were to go a side street over, they would start riding on a side route that simply would have be free of all of these greatest fears. Now, because of this, over 70% of the riders we talk to simply do not trust Google Maps' bike routing. And neither do we. We love riding bikes, scooters, and micromobility. And in fact, despite our differing levels of riding experience between Maggie and I, we both have felt the same 3 issues and recognize that there's not a solution to address these issues. Maggie is an experienced bike rider. 2.5 years ago, she rode coast to coast through the United States, climbing over 100,000 feet in elevation. She also, in order to map out her whole entire trip, used 10 plus apps, including Google Maps. However, Google Maps took her over dangerous, high traffic and high stress routes, and this forced her to have to stop at every single city and talk to local bike riders to get reliable, safer routes to ride on. Me, on the other hand, I'm a beginner scooter user, and if it wasn't for a bike trip a year ago and this particular scooter ride, I wouldn't have used micromobility in 10 years. Now, my friends and I took a trip and we used a scooter trip and we used Google Maps in order to route ourselves. However, Google Maps took us so close to cars and ongoing traffic that I actually almost crashed into 2 car doors during our ride. And as such, we decided to just move over to the sidewalk because we were scared. And we ended up riding illegally on the sidewalk, as you can see here, maneuvering past people, shops, and actually trying to ride fast enough because this woman unleashed her dog on us. Regardless, this problem does not just apply to Maggie or to me or to the 150 plus micromobility riders we talk to. Yep, this is a problem for 1 in 3 Americans in the United States, or according to McKinsey, 110 million micromobility riders. This space, the micromobility space, is increasing greatly. In fact, it has a 20% compound annual growth rate, which is predicted to increase only after COVID, given that a lot of riders will end up using micromobility vehicles and feeling more comfortable about their own vehicles versus taking communal transportation such as subways. Further, McKinsey created a study which showed that 2 out of 3 Americans feel that they are held back from feeling safe enough to use micromobility due to the lack of infrastructure currently in cities, as well as the danger of riding right next to traffic. Because of this, we see that the market is expanding, and we know that we need a solution urgently to help riders ride safely and sustainably for riders of all experience levels. And that solution is Pointz. as safer micromobility sensitive ways. In other words, our mobile app solution offers reliable, quieter routing to guide users from point A to point B. These routes reduce rider fears that are specific to micromobility riders of falling off their vehicles, getting hit, and are vetted by city bike coalitions. Now, you might be wondering, how do you create these quieter and so-called more reliable routes? We do it through city quiet networks. What are these? These are low-stress, low-traffic networks of roads that come together and allow a rider to be able to access any point in the city safely. Further, these are mapped extensively using the supervision of real riders and experts who know how to ride. This is in contrast to Google Maps' convoluted computer vision algorithms, which lack the interpretability for riders who rely on them and use them. In contrast, our routing at Pointz is created by real riders, subject matter experts who understand how to ride, what it feels like, and what the best routes in a city are. Further, we have crowdsourcing on top of our quiet networks, which allow for day-to-day changes to be reflected in the app and hazards to be pointed out by all types of riders. Now, we have 4 main differentiators from our biggest competitor, who is Google Maps' bike routing. One is that our routing is from subject matter experts who understand the ins and outs of every city. 2, because of this, Pointz has higher micromobility rider trust than car-focused impersonal Google Maps' routing. 3, we leverage community power through our crowdsourced information from riders of all experience levels, as well as quiet networks created by experts, thus creating routes for riders by riders themselves. And 4, unlike Google, we have partnerships and strong relationships with 20 different cities throughout the US who are ready to champion the app.
So Pointz has 3 main revenue streams. The first is ads with local businesses, and the second being selling our proprietary data sets for urban planning so planners can use the information to decide where bike and scooter lanes should go next. Our third stream of revenue is through our freemium model. So we plan to have a free and a paid version of the app. For our go-to-market strategy, we plan to first focus on avid bicycle riders because we know that this group knows their city well and they ride almost every day. They know which roads are quiet and which spots to avoid. Our next market segment is casual bike and scooter riders. So people who use these vehicles for recreation, transportation, or even fitness. Finally, we want to expand the micromobility market. We want to get people who are inexperienced out on the roads. And as you probably know, in Europe, this is a very common way to get around. And we want to make that just as safe to bike and scoot in the United States. As for our acquisition channel, we plan to partner with advocacy groups, bike clubs, nonprofits, bike shops, and even potentially micromobility operators. For our retention strategy, we know that our user base is dedicated and connected. They want to help each other out, and they're really great about sharing information with each other. Finally, we plan to use gamification and incentives to keep people coming back to our app and excited to continue using sustainable transportation. As for our timeline, it's November, and right now we're developing the Providence Quiet Network. Over winter break, we're dedicating our time to doing full stack tech development to have our app ready for our beta test in January, which we plan to release in Providence. Throughout the month of February, we plan to collect feedback from our beta testers and iterate on our technology based on that feedback. In March, we will be creating quiet networks in Boston and New York City and deploying the app in May before the summer starts in those 2 cities. You can see some milestones that we've hit at the bottom of the screen, including over $2,500 awarded in grants and placing in some competitions. So our vision for Pointz is that in 2021, we want to support 50,000 micromobility riders in East Coast cities. By 2022, we plan to continue that growth and consolidate all micromobility operators onto our platform so we can have a one-stop platform for small vehicle navigation. by 2025, we want to sustain our app for 10 million users, and 1 million of those users being new micromobility riders. We want to create a larger lifestyle brand to aid in the micromobility community so that they can feel comfortable when they're transitioning to their clean energy vehicles. The team consists of myself, I'm the CEO, and Trisha, who's the CTO. We're both juniors at Brown, and we're concentrating in computer and environmental science and have been recognized by Congress and top tech companies. We believe that we are, is that time?
Yeah, you got time, but that's okay. If you got one more sentence.
Okay. We believe that we're the team that is ready to deploy micromobility in all U.S. cities.
Awesome. Great job, guys. All right. Now back to our three great judges. So you can stop sharing, and judges, please start asking questions of our entrepreneurs here, Trisha and Maggie.
I love both of the energy that you both exude. You're obviously both smart, you're approachable, and your storytelling, which I'm really big into. Being a journalist before a social entrepreneur is really important to me. So bravo at the top of your presentation to say you found a problem because you experienced it yourself and you were looking for a solution. So I love that. So keep going with that as you move forward. I just want to be sure this is not live yet, right? You're testing it?
Correct. Yes, yep.
Okay, so you're testing it right now. Is there a way where users can listen and not, because I'm just thinking of somebody looking down and around, as far as the adaptability of it, can it just be audio only so that we're getting around the fear, which is what you're telling us Google Maps does, which is essentially drive you right into traffic? If you're dealing with all your senses, is there a way to make it so it's audio only too? And is it like Waze where it adapts to live conditions on the roads versus taped?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. So thank you for your question. Yes, this is something that we've actually heard. We've talked to over 15 different micromobility operators. So like Lime scooters, some of the smaller operators as well, Bird Spin. And all of them have really pointed this out because they're focused on scooters. They understand that if they were to create a mapping app, it has to be audio or some other way of delivery. So this is something that we are looking into after we vet, that our routing and that these quiet networks will really be effective, which is through our January launch. And we plan to transmit these directions via auditory connections with helmets. There's existing helmet products where you can connect them and have like your audio, for example, from your app connect to it, as well as haptics. So maybe like touch sense based.
So it's on your radar screen.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And to answer the second part of your question, which is if it's live, yes, it will be like the feedback that we get from the crowdsourcing will be like reflected on the map in a live form. So like once somebody submits that feedback, it'll be reflected on our maps.
Waze. I see. Okay. So the idea is this is essentially what Waze is for cars. This is for micro mobility.
Exactly. Yep. Except ours has a different like fundamental layer, which is those quiet networks.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. Interesting.
Right. So Rommel or Thor, questions?
I have a question. Maggie, Trisha, love what you guys are doing. A few of my close friends are big Strava. They love Strava. They're cyclists. There's a community in Strava, and I kind of can see where you guys are going with. I'm curious, have you guys thought of other exit opportunities for yourselves besides taking this public, right? Have you thought about potentially selling your IP and app to the Strava network? Because I think what you guys have built with these quiet networks, continuing to build, can really power a lot of other apps out there for micromobility.
Yeah, I can take this one. We have looked at other potential exit opportunities besides trying to go public. One of those exits is potentially Strava or other like bike-focused mapping companies. So if you've heard of like Garmin, that's an option. We've also thought about some of the bigger mapping companies, like Apple Maps actually just released their bike directions, but they're pretty not great yet because they're brand new. So we were thinking Apple might be interested to go up against Google because they're both big tech companies. But yeah, we've thought about looking at tech companies to exit to.
And I'm going to add on to Maggie's point as well. So Strava has a really experienced rider, adventure rider sort of intense rider base. And a lot of cities we've talked to, we have lots of partnerships with cities. They have been telling us that, Strava has a Strava Metro application, which is being released to give analytics to cities to plan where their infrastructure goes. And this is reflective of kind of that group of experienced riders. We want to be able to create analytics for riders of all abilities, especially new riders with points, ultimately.
And Thor, do you have one quick question? We have about
Yeah, quick one. I just lived in Sweden for 2 years where we bicycled everywhere, came back to the States, and boy, do I have a lot of lights on my bike right now just to keep from getting killed. Thanks a lot. Good ideas. I think you are going after a lot of the apps that people are already using. I got two things to think about more than just questions. One is, are you going to give me the same kind of service that I'm getting from other bike apps? What do I use? I use Zeopoxit for cruising around. I like all good to have and see what I'm doing. Two is you need this thing to work by word of mouth. You need a zillion people to be using this app. How are you really going to do that? Because the partners, word of mouth, gamification is interesting, but there's some dots that I would love to see connected there.
all right, great.
Go.
Did you want to answer? Go for it.
Yeah, so we are hopefully going to give the same feature set where you're able to track your metrics eventually as well for the first part of your question. And yeah, for our strategy on how to reach a lot of people, that is tough because we do need a huge user base to make this viable. And I think, one of our strategies is to really capitalize on those micromobility operators. So they have a huge user basis already. So if we can get partnerships with them, for example, City Bike, Lime, Bird, we'll reach a lot of people. Yeah.
And we have like we said in the vision slide, by 2022, we hope to have a feature in our app where users can go in and see, okay, where's the nearest scooter for me? Because there's so many different scooters. Just having those all consolidated on our platform could help as well.